Yo, what's up guys, it's your boy Pav and welcome back to another video. And before we get started, I'm happy to announce that today's video is actually sponsored by Roman. And no, not Reigns. So as many of you guys probably already know, hair loss is very frustrating and is very confusing. And as I've shared before on this channel, I'm actually someone who's also suffered hair loss myself. Some of you guys didn't actually believe me, but I swear it is 100% true. I know the pain of sleeping and then waking up and just seeing hair all over your pillow and just getting sad. I know the pain of trying a bajillion different shampoos and praying somehow it will make my hair stop falling in the shower. And because of that, from personal experience, I also know that the sooner a person starts treatment for hair loss, the easier it is to keep the hair they already have. And sometimes they can even regrow some of that lost hair. For a lot of men, losing their hair means losing their confidence. But thankfully, Roman makes it easy to fight hair loss, with a range of prescription and over-the-counter products to help make you feel more confident from top down. Roman offers those products with a discreet process from start to finish, along with fast and free shipping so you don't have to wait to fight hair loss. These are science-backed treatments that are proven to either stop or slow hair loss and sometimes even help regrow hair. So if you're suffering from hair loss, go do something about it. Go to ro.co/wrestlinggifts today, and if you're approved, you'll get your first month of treatment for free. That's ro.co/wrestlinggifts with 1G. Shout out to Roman for sponsoring today's video, but now it's time for today's feature presentation. Let's get straight into it. It's 2022 and we live in a world where there is one mainline WWE video game series. We have the polarizing yearly 2K series that releases on all the major consoles. PlayStation, Xbox, PC, it doesn't matter. As long as you don't have a Switch, you're gonna get the same 2K game. And this one franchise for all consoles has been a thing ever since SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, when the SmackDown series for the first time expanded to the Xbox 360. Ever since then, every year when a new wrestling game came out, it didn't matter if you were on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, iOS, Granny's vibrator, every console was getting SmackDown vs. Raw, and then WWE, and then finally the 2K series. But let's go back to the year 2002 when things were very different. The PS2, Xbox, and the GameCube were the new kids on the block, and the coolest thing to me as a kid was how all three consoles had their very own WWE Games series. For better or for worse, mainly worse for Xbox users, every year from 02 until 05, all three consoles had their very own WWE games with their very own identities. Of course, PlayStation had the SmackDown series, which was born on the PlayStation in 2000. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Xbox had their own series with their own branding, their own vibe, and their own gameplay. On Xbox, they had Raw and Raw 2, and eventually it became WrestleMania 21. And out of the three series, these are definitely the worst of the bunch. And lastly, the GameCube. The GameCube had the WrestleMania series that eventually became the Day of Reckoning series. And even though SmackDown on PlayStation was getting all the love and all the hype, the GameCube games were just doing their thing on the side. And what was really special about the GameCube games was every year the games did get better. And what was so cool was these games did everything they could to stay true to what the fans wanted, and that was a classic style Nintendo wrestling game. See, back in the day, a PlayStation WWE game had its own vibe, and it was the same for Nintendo games. If you wanted a fast-paced, arcadey, going crazy gameplay with the latest matches like Elimination Chambers, if you want to go backstage and explore, if you want to play wrestling in a sandbox, that was the SmackDown PlayStation games. But Nintendo was all about that buttery smooth, grapple-heavy, kind of more realistic style. And that was what the Nintendo fans loved with wrestling games. Ever since back in the Nintendo 64 days with Revenge, Mania 2000, and No Mercy, that's what fans expected in a Nintendo wrestling game. Most wrestling game players on Nintendo, they didn't want SmackDown, they wanted the games to feel like Nintendo wrestling games, what they were used to, what they've been playing for years. And it just seems so cool to us to have these other games out there that you knew were going to be totally different than what you were playing, and the idea of your own console having its own series with its own identity to this day is just very cool to me. And 2005 was the last year where we had this before every console just got the SmackDown series, and it was going to be the end of an era. What began with the WCW and Japanese wrestling games back in 1996 on the N64. And if you really think about it, the Nintendo wrestling games really started the wrestling game boom in the late 90s. The tradition of Nintendo having its own wrestling IP with its own style and vibe was finally going to end. We were going to get the last true Nintendo wrestling game. After all the classics spanning over 9 years, spanning across 2 different consoles, after all the ups and downs, the last ever exclusive WWE Nintendo game dropped on August 29th, 2005. And even though it was the last one, and even though it came out the same year as the classic SVR 2006, this game, to this day, is an all-time great. Ladies and gentlemen, it's finally time to take a look back at WWE Day of Reckoning 2 for the Nintendo GameCube. Let's get into it. Firstly, what blows my mind to this day is the fact that Nintendo GameCube was actually a more powerful console than the PlayStation 2, and if there is any game that showcases that, trust me, it's this game right here. As soon as you start up DOR 2, you were presented with the coolest and I swear to God the best menu in wrestling game history. The main menu is actually the outside of an arena, and it's fully modeled with fans standing outside waiting to get in. It's the THQ arena, and honestly, this just looks amazing. The amount of detail they put into this is absolutely insane, and this is just the first menu. The best part is each sub-menu is actually a different part of the arena. So if you press options, you get taken to the production truck. If you go to the store, you get taken to the WWE concession stand inside the arena. And side note guys, I swear to God, I would do disgusting, deplorable, inexcusable things to get that Eugene shirt. Wait, what? And once you are in the arena, you were presented with the sexiest stage design and the lighting is just perfect, just chef's kiss. Once you choose your venue like Raw, SmackDown, WrestleMania or whatever, the arena just pops up and it looks so good. Well, that's just the beginning. That is just the beginning of how good this game looks, how powerful the GameCube was to run this, because then you obviously have to choose your wrestler. So you go through the roster, which is pretty solid. It's nothing crazy, nothing to write home about. You choose your wrestler, you start the game, and it loads, and I swear to God, when it finally loaded, my jaw was on the fucking floor. See, I always knew this game looked amazing. I knew it looked awesome, but just playing it again, even now in 2022, 17 years later, yes, 17 years later, this game is one of the sexiest wrestling games I have ever seen in my life. Even now, all these years later, seeing these models, seeing the wrestlers make their entrance, the lighting, how the environment looks, the detail they put into the stages, and especially just the wrestlers themselves, their skin tones, their face scans, it is still jaw-dropping to this day. I don't know what kind of crack they were on, I don't know what got into their heads, but it's like they were just like, alright, this is it, this is the last GameCube wrestling game, just YOLO, just throw everything out there, put it on ultra settings, let's do this. Batista looks so real in this game, it's actually trippy. Triple H looks fantastic, everyone just looks so good, and it is amazing to see. And then the gameplay starts, and ladies and gentlemen, it's the last Nintendo WWE game. You already know by now, just by how much effort they put into the presentation, they went hard in this game. Many consider No Mercy to be the pinnacle of wrestling games all time, right? And this game really does feel like No Mercy in 2005. Not only does this game look amazing, not only does it have the best camera angle, you know, the camera angle that every wrestling game should have where you can see the stage, it just plays like how a Nintendo wrestling game should be. It is truly a spiritual successor to No Mercy in my opinion. This game is so fluid, so satisfying to play, and it is just so damn good. Shout out to Triple H. And at the same time, it feels nothing like the SmackDown games, and that's in a good way. Both games came out in 2005, and it's really cool how they are so amazing in their own ways. Both games have the same arenas, the same wrestlers, they both, you know, reflect the same era, the same year, but it's so cool to see the differences and how you had options. If you wanted to play the SmackDown style, then get a PlayStation. If you wanted to play the GameCube style, get a GameCube. And if you were balling in 05, hell, you probably had both. Here on the GameCube side, the gameplay is so much more tighter, and it truly does feel like a fighting game, and I love the impact of the moves in here. It looks absolutely brutal no matter what move you're doing. When you're just mashing your opponents in with punches, it looks devastating. And yo, when you do a power move, nah, GG, it definitely looks like your opponent has a concussion. The moves are so quick but look so brutal. And I love how every wrestler you play with feels unique. And there are so many little things in the gameplay that I just love, that I just absolutely adore. I love how you can target the referee and legit do whatever you want to them. I love how sometimes even the computer accidentally targets the referee and hits them with their finisher. I just love how the game feels so alive. So yes, you can hit the referee and you never feel like you're just doing an animation to do an animation, because if you do a move and another wrestler is standing beside you or even the referee, boom, they're gonna get clapped too with the impact. And I love how moves can be broken apart, which is a feature that's something the SmackDown vs. Raw games didn't get until like 2011. Another great feature is actually, if you're a lighter wrestler and you want to pick up someone heavier than you, like if you're Shawn Michaels trying to pick with a Big Show, you actually can, unlike the SmackDown vs. Raw games. You just need stamina, you just need momentum, and you just need to spam the hell out the A button, and you need a whole lot of prayers. This game just checks all the boxes for what you would want in a game that's an alternative to the SmackDown series. There is just something about playing in these 04, 05 arenas, seeing the stage and the graphics in the background. You're just casually tweaking with Kurt Angle, taking the straps off and hitting the angle slam. It is so satisfying and I love it. And what I really like about this, which adds to how brutal the game feels at times, is the blood system. See, in this game, it is very easy to make your opponent bleed in the game, which is fine, it's great, that's cool. But what's awesome is the game actually has 3 different types of blood in the game. There's mild, moderate, and the crimson mask. The more severe, the more there is, and the more difficult it is to manage your stamina. So if you have the crimson mask and it's dawn, you're gonna be dead tired, you can barely move and barely do a move. Of course, like every other 2000s wrestling game, Hell in a Cell matches are really fun. You can climb the inside of the cage once again. TLC is a blast, and even though this game isn't as environmentally friendly as SVR, you can still do a lot of crazy stuff. Momentum shift is really fun too. It's when your wrestler is just getting their ass beat, and just like the classic matches, you're tired, you're done, but out of nowhere you can just pull out a finisher out of your ass and just hit it out of nowhere and you're back in control. And what really surprised me was a lot of wrestlers have corner specials too. Like, I didn't realize this, but I was so surprised when I was just playing a random match and out of nowhere I just casually did an insane RKO in the corner from Randy Orton. I had no idea it was in his moveset, I never expected it, but nah, boom, and it was so clean. So yeah, in case you can't tell, I truly love the gameplay, but once again, what really makes me fall in love with the game is how it looks. It's the presentation, it's the lighting, it captures 05 so perfectly that when I'm playing this game, it really does feel like I'm sitting there in 05, a 7-year-old kid watching Spike TV. The presentation just adds so much to the game, and to this day, it is truly a beautiful game that still holds up, not just in gameplay, but the graphics as well. And yeah, the footage more than shows you that. If you're watching these clips and it doesn't make you feel like you want to play this game, I don't know what to tell you. This is 100% something you just have to try. As we move on, this game of course had a story mode. This game does not really have much modes. It's exhibition and story mode, but trust me, this was back when story mode / season modes were everything in games, and this story mode holds it down. And the best thing the story mode had going for it was it had such a great approach. To start the season mode, you actually had to create a wrestler. You couldn't use a standard wrestler, you can't be John Cena or The Undertaker or anything, you have to create a wrestler. And unlike many created wrestler story modes, they're usually all the same, right? It's always, you know, I'm just a new wrestler on the block, I'm trying to grind to the top and get signed, I want to go from developmental to SmackDown to Raw. But nah, not in here, because you already did that last year. See, this is one of the few, if not the only, as far as I can remember, wrestling story modes that directly continues from the previous game. Yes, this story mode picks up 1 year after Day of Reckoning 1. So you can make the exact same character, and just like that, you're right back into the exact same WWE world. So yeah, after last year's season mode in which you joined Evolution and then you got kicked out of Evolution, after ending the season mode by beating Triple H to become champion at WrestleMania, here you are 11 months later, your created wrestler is back at it and you're trying to regain the title that has been vacated. Yes, in my story mode, New Jack was in Evolution and went on to beat Triple H at WrestleMania for the title, and no, it is not the first time Triple H has put over a criminal at Mania. But yeah, just like that, you're back at it, you're still with your girlfriend Stacy, and you're climbing your way back up to become champion once again, and I just love it. I love the fact that the storyline continues. It's such a legendary idea, and it is a shame that this hasn't been done since then. Imagine how fun it would be if your My Rise character from 2K22 can just transfer to 2K23, and the career just continues with new storylines, and the new wrestlers are thrown in, new everything. But no. Why would we have that, right? Why would we have some actual fun features? Like, I am so tired in the modern games of doing this stupid NXT tryout with fat ass Prince Albert and now with Shawn Michaels. Like, I am so tired of that. Whereas this handled it perfectly. Yeah, you already know what you're doing, you're already a main eventer, welcome back, bro. However, back in 05, they had it all figured out and they had this story mode down. The cutscenes are class just like last year, and it's crazy how realistic they really made this season mode. No joke, the story mode in this game is one of the most realistic ones I've ever seen at replicating real life WWE. In this story mode, firstly, Triple H is just there trying to bury everyone and everything. He has his shovel out and he is doing his best to hold down the entire roster. It even involves him joking about how he's in a politic with Vince and Eric Bischoff. All he cares about is the title. Ric Flair is following him around like the little minion. It's perfect. But then, speaking of Flair, this man bleeds like every single week in the story mode, so they definitely have that nailed down. Whenever Muhammad Hassan is in the story mode, he never fails to mention how he's an Arab American and that everyone is racist towards him because he's an Arab American. And of course, the most realistic thing is Edge is always lurking around trying to steal your girl, acting like the biggest perv ever. And that's just all the people involved in the first month. Trust me, it gets way better the more you play. It doesn't get more 2005 than this, and just for that alone, this is a 10 out of 10. You actually get to make your own decisions in this mode as well, so that obviously helps. You get to choose who do you want to partner with, what storylines, who do you want to pursue, what do you want to do, who do you want to beef. There's freedom, and also what really helps is it still has a little goof to it. You know, some of the storylines are pretty goofy, like the world title magically goes missing, but at the same time, it's a game. We expect that. It's not too goofy either. I definitely recommend everyone plays the season mode. I had way more fun than I expected to play this, and there are some twists, there are some turns, so I don't want to spoil anything. This is definitely a must-play story mode. But yeah, this game just took me straight back to 2005, and what a time it was to be alive. This game, like I said, doesn't have much more than that, right? It's exhibition, it's story mode, and there's a creation suite, and that's about it. But for its time, for 2005, it was more than enough, and even to this day, the game is so good and so fun, it still is enough. It is genuinely impressive how GameCube games were on these tiny ass little CDs, only 1.4 GB of storage, but they were casually just storing games like Day of Reckoning 2 with the most insane graphics we'd have ever seen at that point. They fit this game into 1.4 GB and they compressed the hell out of it, and it's so impressive, especially when you compare it to how PS2 had access to 4.7 GB DVDs. I truly love this game. I think it is no doubt a classic wrestling game, and I think it's top notch, and dare I say it is actually very underrated. Not by people who actually played the game, but by people who never played it enough or just didn't play it at all because it was on the GameCube. So many people disregard this game and never really had the chance to play it because it was on the GameCube, and that's kind of a shame. But yeah, once upon a time, dating back to the 90s, but especially from 2000 until 2005, we were getting multiple WWE games every year, all with their own features and own rosters, own story mode, and their own identities tied to the console they were on. We used to be a proper country. But nah, of course there are downsides to this as well. The poor Xbox users used to get banged in back in the day having to play Raw 1 and WrestleMania 21. And it does make more sense, and it is easier to have one universal game, but at the end of the day, there was just something so cool about this, and what an end to an era this was. From the mid-90s until the mid-2000s, Nintendo wrestling games were staples to Nintendo consoles. They played such an important role to Nintendo beyond their first-party games. Just like how Smackdown was important to the PS2, wrestling games were very important to Nintendo, especially the 64. Wrestling games played a huge part for Nintendo from the 90s until the mid-2000s. You just weren't going to get games like Revenge and No Mercy and Day of Reckoning anywhere else, and you didn't even want to because they just felt right on Nintendo. And this was the end. This was the end of the line for Nintendo wrestling games that 2 generations grew up on. And after this, everyone became a Smackdown player. And what's crazy is, as great as SVR07 was, I love that game, probably my top 3, definitely my favorite SVR game of all time, that was also when the game slowly started to feel a lot less like Smackdown, and they became their own thing. By 2008, wrestling games were back on the Nintendo consoles with SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, which was a very interesting game, a very limited game, but a very fun game to look back at. But I always wonder, what if instead of SVR08 on the Wii, what if instead of porting it and dumbing it down and stripping it of everything that made it good, what if instead they just had Day of Reckoning 3 for the Wii? What if the PS3 and the Xbox 360 got SVR, and instead of dumbing the games down, what if Nintendo just carried on with having their very own WWE games that fit into what a Nintendo wrestling game were all about? Games that carried the No Mercy, Revenge, and Day of Reckoning DNA. It would have been perfect. But nah, instead, this was it. But regardless, what a way it was to go out. The roster might be lacking in this game, the modes might be bare bones with only 2 modes in the game, but I swear to God, I don't care what anyone says, and I feel like everyone who's played this game agrees with me. This game is an all-time great game, and is definitely, no doubt, top 10 wrestling game of all time. It's your boy Pav, aka Wrestling Ifs. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave down below your favorite memories of playing this game growing up back in the day. I can't wait to read them. Shout out to the GameCube, shout out to Nintendo, and shout out to Day of Reckoning 2. What a game. See you guys later. Peace.